So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what grants management is for those who might not know. In New York State, we started about 10, 11 years ago, coming up with a program, a unit. We started in a lot of different ways to help reform grants in New York State. Really, we started out as a reform organization. And that was because a lot of times in New York State, for anybody who's gotten grants from us before, you might know that our contracts sometimes get executed late. They get executed after their start date. And for people that are in not-for-profits, that are in, organizations that might not have a lot of money, that can be problematic. People end up not having the funds they need to continue their work, to do the things they need with continuity. It sometimes means people have to work at risk. They don't want to do that. We don't want people to do that. So one of the things that we decided to do was to try and fix that. There have been a lot of different ways that New York State has tried to fix it through the years. And the biggest one was really an enterprise system for grants. The idea was if we could come up with a grants management system where everybody could do their grants work online instead of having to do things through email or through paper. I mean, I used to work at an agency that I would carry paper around to get signatures on contracts. So it was antiquated. It was not great use of my time, great use of anybody's time, really. So we decided that this was the way to do it. We created what we called the Grants Gateway. And we had the Grants Gateway operational for about 10 years. And we had a lot of success with it. We got 30,000 users, something like that in there. We did about 30, $40 billion at least went through it in funding. Many thousands of contracts and applications. And we had 30 different state agencies using it. So it was successful. Of course, it's difficult to learn. We've always had that. But once people get used to it, you do okay. So we did that. However, earlier this year, we transitioned into the statewide financial system. Now, the statewide financial system is exactly what it sounds like. It's the financial system for our state. It's where all of the funding that you might get, that other organizations get, it's what it goes through. So that's where, your direct deposit would come from, essentially. And it's where all the accounting is held. It made a lot of sense to put grants with that, in that system, in that organization, in that organizational system. The reason we didn't do it in the beginning was because SFS was also just coming up at the same time we were. It was being, created at the same time. So it didn't make sense to try and do everything at once in one place. But we knew eventually we would end up there, and now we are there. The good thing is, when we moved into SFS, we had found a lot of the problems that we ran into with the gateway, right? We knew what some of the roadblocks were. So we tried really hard to come up with a more intuitive system. Most importantly, I think we updated our pre-qualification and made that much easier, at least in terms of what we are looking for. Our questions were cut down. The way that it's structured is a lot easier than it was in the gateway. So we have, some improvements there. And then we always, wanted to enhance our application, our contracts, and anything that has to do with claims, which works very well in the statewide financial system because it's financed. My team, the grants management team, we don't actually work for SFS. We have our own unit, but we work very closely with SFS in that we assist with the system, we assist with the help desk, and we work with state agencies and not-for-profits to help them do their grants business. One of the things you're going to see throughout this presentation are pictures of our website, and that's because we created that as a resource for people when they're going to do the actual, each of the pieces that they have to do for a grant. So for instance, you have to register. There's a page for that. You have to pre-qualify if you're a not-for-profit, page for that. you have to apply, go in and apply if you're doing it in SFS. There's a, you know, so on and so on. So I do have that in there, and I'm going to tell you a lot today, and I talk fast. You're not going to remember 90% of it. And I don't expect you to, but I will provide this presentation. In fact, I have to the group, and if it's okay, hopefully they can distribute it. And it has a lot of links in it. It has some really really good information, but it's not stuff that you're going to remember. So you're going to want to use the resources that we discussed today. Another website here is the New York State nonprofit website, and I always give this a plug. I want to say, well, she's been around a long time. There's a member of chamber, been around since I began, so 12 years. She was, I believe, appointed by, Governor Cuomo at the time. And she's a not-for-profit liaison, basically. She has a unit that works directly with nonprofits, helps with any problems they may be having. Additionally, there is a statutorily required, it's a council, kind of a group that has to meet every other month, it's quarterly, meets quarterly. And they talk about contracting with not-for-profits. That's really the goal. The goal is how can we fix things, make it better? They look at all kinds of different issues, not just contracts, but, they'll talk about, recently we talked about a revolving loan fund. So there's, all kinds of different things. That is an open meeting. People are allowed to go. So on their website, which is linked here, they have the schedule and they'll have how you can sign up. And you can go, through the web. If you're in Albany, you can come to the Blue Room, be with us. If you're in New York City, you can do that. There's a place in New York City people come. So, it's a really great thing to help stay tuned. So I like to give that a plug. Okay. Now we're going to talk about what you have to do. So one of the things you have to do is register. If you're not registered, you can't do anything until you're in the system, until you're in SFS. And that would be the way that you're going to start being able to apply for a grant in New York State. Because if you're not for profit, you have to pre-qualify, and that is done within this system, within the statewide financial system. So this is a little bit complicated, and it's because, I'll tell you why, it's because of the transition from the gateway to SFS. Once you're registered, it's not an issue, but there's two types of registration. The first is if you've never been in SFS at all. Maybe you've never gotten a grant, you've never gotten money from SFS or from the state. Maybe you've never, brand new, never done anything. We are going to help you get registered in the statewide financial system and get everything you need. So on our website, there's the information as to how to do it, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But there is a specific piece that you would want to make sure you have if you are new, and that is the substitute W-9. So there's two forms, a registration form and the substitute W-9. Oh, and an org those two things are needed because in order to register you, we need some financial information because, again, it's the financial system. That's the W-9. That will allow us to get you what's called a supplier ID, it's a New York State identification number, essentially. You'll use that number pretty much for any grants, any applications, things like that. And that's what will also allow you to get into the system. Now, this is for the organization, okay? The organization gets an SFS number. Once you're within the organization, you would then get, we would work on access and roles for you, but that's a little different. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, this is where it gets complicated. There might be some vendors out there who were in the gateway, or maybe we're even in SFS for some reason, but not the gateway. So if you were in SFS for some reason, but not the gateway, it might be that you didn't get grants. You weren't interested in grants before, but maybe you have, I don't know, like some sort of something out of the budget that you get every year that isn't a grant, it's more of an entitlement, something like that. That would generally come through the statewide financial system, so you probably already are in there. Um, if you know you have an SFS ID, what you can do is you can contact our help desk and see if you are set up for grants, or you can just send us a new form. And with that form, all you have to do is click, there's like a box that says, I'm just registering for grants management because I have an SFS ID. You would do that, and we would go in and make sure that you're all set up to do the grants business as well as everything else in SFS. I know that's a little confusing. We do have a help desk, and you can contact it at any time. Okay. I will say, though, this is probably one of the most important things. We need 5 to 10 days in order to do this process. And we also need 5 to 10 days for pre-qualification. So when you're looking at these things, you want to do this as soon as possible. You should do it now. Like, you should turn around and leave and, have a great rest of the conference. That's awesome. But when you get back to your offices, you might want to start the process, because you never know when a grant might pop up that seems great for you, right? And you want to be ready so you can jump in and get it. So the best time to do it is when you don't need it, honestly. If you come to us, 2 days before, we're going to do everything we can, but it's going to be really hard to get you registered. You're in line behind everybody else. And additionally, there are some pieces that happen behind the scenes that we can't control. And that takes time. Okay, so here's what you do. You go to that website that I linked before. There's a form. You download it. Couple of important things. The form does need to be authorized by the head of your organization, CEO, executive director, president, whatever you call that person, the one who runs the show, not the board of directors boss, chair of the board of directors, unless that's all you've got. But in most cases, there's that, as well as the side of the people that work on it, and we're looking for the head of the organization that works within the organization. Form's got to be more notarized, so there's a little information about that. We want to make sure that we are getting the right people in here. We need to know that, because there's financial information, SFS, right? There's financial information. There's banking information, because you're going to be putting in, how to get your ACH payments, right? Your bank stuff is in there. So we really want to know that who we're talking to and who's being the registrant and who we're authorizing is like the head who's making that decision and saying, yes, this is really what we want to do. Because that person is who is going to get the keys to let other people within your organization into the system. If we just let anybody do it, it might be that the head doesn't know what's happening and there could be some craziness there. So always want to know who the head is. You basically send in these forms that we talked about. Okay, so once you've got that, you're going to get an email. And that email for that primary contact, that head of the organization, they're going to receive what we call a welcome packet. And that's going to have information on how to get in to SFS. That person is going to designate a delegated administrator for your organization. What that is the person who is going to give everybody else in your system roles, or in your organization roles. So, for instance, some of you might work just on pre-qualification. So you would need the pre-qualification processor role. The delegated administrator is the one who doles that stuff out. Doesn't mean they're the ones who decide necessarily, but they are the ones who have who end up doing it. And again, the head of the organization, the primary contact, is the one who makes them, so that you make sure you're getting the right person. Once the delegated administrator, you can make other delegated administrators, you can make lots of different things, but it is important that you have one, because that is the person that needs to set up all your people. Now, there are so many resources in SFS, there's a lot. So right here, what I've given you are what we call, there's some job aids. Job aids are these short little digestible documents that SFS puts out. It has some screenshots, it has step-by-step kind of walkthroughs. This is where you go, put in this field, put in this field, put in this field, trying to make it very user-friendly, right? So we have those, and they're for small tasks, right? It's like, just create the account. You're just going to do that part. You're not going to do everything else. Add roles to that account, right? Now, these are the direct links, but there is something called SFS Coach once you are in SFS, and that's where you can search and find all of these things. But I do like to provide the direct links if I can, so that you don't have to do that. Okay, two other pieces here. We have a role guide. It's in Excel. What it is it's simply a flat document that has a list of all of our roles and the names, the official names within SFS. It's not just grants, it's everything that's within SFS. So it's a big document. Not big, but there's a lot there. If you're only doing grants, that's really all you need to worry about are those grants roles. The next one, though, is better, and that's the one I would spend the most time on. This is what we call our Portal Access Reference Guide. I call it the Choose Your Own Adventure Guide, because what you do is you go in and there are buttons that say different tasks, right? So it might say, I sign contracts for my organization. Click that button, and then up pops another button, and that will say you need the contract processor. That's probably not the right name, but contract processor role. It's kind of foolproof. It's going to tell you exactly what you need based on the tasks that you do. And it's been helpful, I've been told. So we definitely suggest you use that when you're trying to figure out what should I give people? Who should be this role? Who should have this role? It's a really helpful way to figure that out. Okay, but if you never got that welcome packet that I described, that enrollment email, or if for some reason they used to have, you used to have a primary contact and that guy left, there is a process to get another primary contact. You'll fill out a form and you will, demonstrate that you are, again, the head of the organization, in order to regain access if the primary contact left. So, and that happens quite frequently. People forget about SFS. If you don't do it a lot, you're not going to remember to go do that if, you have staff changes and stuff. So that happens and we work through it. Okay, but always you can call our help desk. You can email our help desk. We will assist you with any of your access or really any issues. Okay, pre-qualification. Here is our, like I said, our website screen that talks about it. And, kind of down this left-hand lane here, it's got just, you can click on each of these and it'll give you just the topic. What is the requirement? Why is the requirement? Why are we doing this? How do I do it? What are the forms? How can I get help? What do I do after my initial pre-qual? So again, lots of information there, but we're going to talk about it. Okay, so what is pre-qual? Okay, pre-qualification is a process where vendors, not-for-profit vendors, will become contract ready prior to the application phase of a grant competition. The reason for that is, there's a few reasons, but one of the big ones is that we used to, for many, many years, there were lots of things in pre-qualification, things like looking at tax documentation, making sure you're incorporated, making sure you have accurate bylaws and that you're following the bylaws, things like that. There are things that we need to know before we can give you a contract. And oftentimes in the past, we would have people go through the application process. Not-for-profits would spend a lot of time creating a good grant application. We would then review it, go through all of that, award it, start developing a contract. There's a lot of work. And then they would tell us they hadn't done a tax return in 5 years. And that, we can't give you a contract. If that's the case, we got to get that straightened out. This way, we learn that way in the beginning, and we can help you get straightened around. We can, give you advice, help you figure out what you need to do to alleviate whatever issues you might have ahead of time. The other thing is, a lot of people say, oh, you're trying to catch fraud, right? Sure, we don't want fraud. Absolutely. Is this going to catch every fraud? No, I don't think so. One of the best things it does, though, is that it identifies for small not-for-profits areas where they might be able to improve and not fall in to fraud. And I say that, it's not really tongue in cheek. We have seen small organizations just not know. Brand new organizations come in, their work, you get a lot of people with not-for-profits who have great skills at doing the work that they do, working with clients, working with housing, working with all the great things that you do. Their jobs have not been trying to pre-qualify or trying to, make sure that the bylaws are completely perfect and that this is right. And occasionally that will cause people to kind of make mistakes, which don't look good. This way, we can help with that and we can help build capacity. Okay, so that's why. What is it? It's a set of questions and a set of documents. The questions measure, a few things that we'll talk about in a moment. The documents basically confirm that you have the things that you need. And we as a state, we have pre-qualification specialists. They will review that information. Oftentimes they'll need to engage with you, go back and forth, ask some questions. And then, eventually you get pre-qualified. You cannot apply for a grant, a competitive grant, if you are not pre-qualified. Within the statewide financial system, if the grant is being run through there, it won't even let you submit if you're not pre-qualified and you're a not-for-profit. So if you are applying for a grant within the SFS system and you got all the way to submit it and you hit submit and you are not pre-qualified in that system, it's going to say you're not pre-qualified. You can't submit. You need to go do that. That becomes a problem because many people try to wait till the very last minute to submit. And let me tell you, don't do that. Do it as early as you can with an application because this stuff happens and you don't want to be caught confused at the end or unaware. So yes, so we're looking to, address all of that ahead of time. So you won't be able to apply. If the grant is outside of SFS, there's really no system stop. We can't we can't stop you from submitting it if it's not within SFS, but we won't review it. We will look when we get all the applications. If this is outside of SFS, we look at them and then we say, this one was pre-qualified, this one wasn't. If you weren't pre-qualified, you won't be evaluated, essentially. Again, 5 to 10 days, submit it as early as possible because there might be some back and forth, and you do need to be pre-qualified before you apply. All right, I think I just went through all of this. But once you are pre-qualified, so you'll pre-qualify this year, maybe, and then in a year, another year, you have 3 financial documents. It's a 990, your audit, basically your financial statement or audit, and then your charities bureau filing with the Attorney General for New York State. Those 3 documents expire annually. Obviously, you do a 990 every year, you get an audit every year, Charities Bureau every year. So those 3 documents, you do have to go in annually and update. And you will lose pre-qualification when they expire if you don't update them proactively. Once it expires, you still can go in and update it. That's fine. And then we'll review it. It's not like you lose anything unless you are applying for something. If you're not applying, you're okay. You can go in at your leisure. But I would suggest that you, just like with applying to get it the additional in the first place, you want to make sure that you are, keeping up with it as it expires. So here are the types of things we're looking for. We're looking for questions, answers to questions, and we're trying to gauge your organizational capacity, the compliance you have with, rules for basic business, and integrity. And the integrity is basically vendor responsibility questions. If you've ever done those for New York State, we're looking to see things like, has your staff been arrested? Have you had contracts arrested for stuff within the work, not outside? Have you had contracts taken away for cause, things like that. We're looking to establish if there has been something that we need to investigate more, basically. The documents that we're looking for are basically things that show that you are in compliance with, all of the rules for an incorporated not-for-profit. So we're looking for your certificate of incorporation. I will say there are many places that have a hard time finding that, and it's not necessarily by any fault of their own. Some of these places were incorporated in the 1800s. I used to work for one actually, and it was hard tracking that down. Once we did, it really didn't look normal like the ones that everybody else saw. So we kind of had to go and get, a new one sort of like updated and all this stuff. So, we didn't have to do that, but we wanted to. So you definitely might have to do some searching to find that if it's not something you've needed for many years. So that can take some time. If you use a DBA, if your organization also goes by another name, you would need to upload that, a certificate that shows that. We do look for your 501c, whatever. It might be a 3, it might be a 6, it might be a 4, determination letter. Now, interestingly, you don't have to apply for that. So if for some reason you didn't, as a not-for-profit, you would just upload a letter saying we aren't that. There's not very many that don't, though, because why wouldn't you? Okay, IRS 990, we do need to see your tax filing each year. And along with that goes your audit. Most, all not-for-profits should have some sort of financial accounting at the end of the year. We do understand that small organizations probably aren't getting a CPA audit at however much that costs. We understand, that can be very expensive. So we have some rules. If your budget is under a certain amount, I apologize, I don't have that in my head. But we do have all of that on our website in our pre-qualification manual for you guys. It states all of that stuff. But if you have, maybe it's under $1 million, I don't remember, but under a certain budget, you would be able to upload basically just a document of your finances for the last year that was reviewed by your board, things like that. So there are some exceptions. Okay. And then with the Attorney General's office, we have a charities bureau. You are supposed to file annually for that. So we do have that. We look for your board of directors profile, pretty easy, senior leadership resumes. We like a copy of your bylaws, and we need an org chart. We have examples of pretty much all of these things, not the bylaws, but the rest of these things right here on our website. Many people will say, I don't know what an org chart is supposed to look like. We've given you a template. They don't know what a board of directors profile is supposed to look like. We provided a template. Pretty easy. We're not looking for much there. But, things like that. So those are the items that we're looking for. Okay. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time here because I know people probably have questions, and that's usually a better use of our time. But I do want to show you some screens and kind of quickly go through some SFS stuff, because I know many of you are in there. I know many people want to see it. So this is a little bit about that. SFS is set up with tiles on a home page. These little squares are called tiles. And the tiles are there based on what role you have, which means what permissions you have. So for instance, if you are what I described earlier, the delegated administrator, you would have this tile that says maintain users. But if you were the pre-qualification specialist and you have no responsibility of maintaining users, because that's not your job, you would have a tile that says pre-qualification or something similar. And you would go there. So these things show up based on that. Now, there is a grant sort of homepage, I guess, that will show some information about your organization. I know it's hard to read. It basically has, your pre-qualification status, your mission statement, your budget, things like that. It's basically an informational page, but we do like you to go look at it, make sure it's up to date, fill it out if it's not, and make sure things are looking good there. So if you are the pre-qualification processor, you have that role, this tile shows up, you might want to work on your application. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to click on that tile. You're going to see what we call our welcome page. There's a lot of info here. But essentially what it boils down to is you are given one of three choices. You're going to initiate an application. You're only going to see this once. The very first time that you start your pre-qualification. If you were converted from the gateway and your information came over, you're not even going to see it. But if you are brand new, you come in, you will initiate your very first application. There's also collaborate. Collaborate allows you to update an application that you're already working on, but you haven't yet submitted it to us. We also have update, which is a terrible word because of how I just described what collaborate is. Update is essentially begin a new version because it's now time for your next year. Your stuff is expiring, time to re-up and go to the next year. So we are calling that update a pre-qualification application. Okay, so once you get in there, you're going to see some screens. And we tried really hard to not have anybody who was in the gateway knows that we had a lot of different forms that you had to look through. And when you got in there, it was a lot of confusion. What we did here is these are called train stops, and these are just the 4 screens you have to look at. And you can just go click, 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 click to get through there. There's, not a lot of mystery. Also, there's a next button up here. So you can really get back and forth very easily. We cut our questions from 30 something to like 18 or 19 or 20, something like that. We got rid of a lot of the stuff that we realized after a number of years wasn't super important. We have a save for later, so you can always come back. And most importantly, we have versioned pre-qualification. Anybody who was in the gateway will remember that if you had been there for a long time and you had been uploading things like your 990, you would have a list that looked like this of every 990 you ever uploaded. And that was because it was all in one group. We now have versioned it so that each year has its own version, and your documents for that year live there. The documents for year 2 live in year 2, so that you don't have to kind of do that sorting and be confused. Makes it a lot easier. Okay, how do you upload? We got that upload page that required documents. It's a little different, a little goofy, because for almost all of the documents, you just click on that little attach button and it opens up a screen, a little pop-up where you can then, just like in any other system, upload a document. These 3, though, the ones that we've been talking about, the financials, those have a different screen. And so you have to click over here where it's blue. And that opens an entirely new screen. And the reason for that is there is some additional information you need to give us there. You need to give us your tax begin and end date. And that helps us calculate your expiration date. When I say tax year and end date, I mean the tax year begin and end date. So for instance, if you're on a fiscal year of 7/1 to 6/30 and you're working on last year's documentation, you would be putting in 6/1/22 to 7/1/23 or whatever. I didn't say that right, but you get the idea. And that's how you do that. Okay, contacts. This is super important. In the gateway, we gave everybody in particular roles emails. So we might say if you had a delegated administrator role in the gateway, you're going to get reminder emails. That's not how we're doing it here, because we were told by a lot of you guys, a lot of vendors, that that's not good. They were getting people who didn't want it, were getting information. So we decided, okay, let's make it so that you can tell us who you want. So we have this contact page, and you can add as many people as you want to get notifications about pre-qualification. Like I told you, those 3 documents expire. We're going to tell you. We're not going to make you guess. So 30 days before, we're going to start sending you emails. You'll get one. I think it's 30/20/10. And then I think you get some after as well, like before, 30 days before you're warned, 20 days before 10. And then afterwards, we're like, hey, you're expired for a couple of times. And then we give up. So we do send those, and this is who we send those to. So you can put as many people as you want. I suggest more than two. You never know what's going to happen. Somebody might leave, and then you're not going to have the information. Okay. And then you submit it. Pretty easy. Variety of resources. Again, we have so much information available. Probably the most important is the grantee pre-qualification manual. This one is on our website, link here. It's the documentation that tells you policy stuff. So it'll tell you what we're looking for with the answers to the question for the most part. It'll tell you, what document we're looking for and where you can find it if you don't have it, things like that. We also have those examples that I told you about. And we also have a very large handbook that is the SFS kind of manual for grants. It's a lot of pages, but we do have different topics and you can, just go right to that topic. So we do have an enter and submit pre-qualification application topic in the SFS handbook. I would also suggest just downloading that and putting it somewhere because it does have a lot of great information. It's not something you would sit and read, but when you go to do a task, you would go to that section and look at it. Oops, sorry. Okay. We also have a webinar where somebody walks through what I just showed you much slower and will actually put the information in as they do it so you can see how it works. We also have a webinar that's focused on how to do that and renew also a pre-qualification expired application. Both of these are videos. So you click on them, you'll watch them, and they're really, really good. We also have, if you look in Coach, in SFS Coach, once you get there, you will see, you can search. So you can search pre-qualification, and there are lots of different resources as well. And we'll talk about that right here. We have more links here for commonly used, Coach things. So these are some that I told you about already. But here are some videos. We tried to do these. Oops. Oh, shoot. Hold on. We tried to do these short videos because a lot of people would say, I don't like a long one. I don't like trying to have to find what I'm looking for. So we tried to do these very quick ones that you could watch and just get quickly what you needed. So we have adding roles and using the home page, things like that. Here are those webinars. Here are some trainings that we did. Here's some basic troubleshooting, just some helpful links for you. I will say every Wednesday at this time, at 11, we have a vendor call, a support call. And the information for that is also listed on our website in the training section for vendors. And we do different types of training. So we'll do training on bid events, on how to apply for a grant, on pre-qualification. And when we do that, oftentimes, more often than not, nobody shows up. 2 people, 3 people, very small amounts of people take advantage of this. And what that means for you is you get one-on-one help from our expert where he will just say, well, what do you need help with? And then you tell them, and then he shows you, and you get coaching. So I'm probably giving that out too much because now people will show up, but it really is a great way to get some help, some really great help. So definitely show up for those. The topic is always listed on our website as well, what the topic is that week. Okay. Really fast because I want to give you time for questions. One of the other things we have is the SFS public portal. This is where you're going to be able to see what bid events, what applications, what opportunities are out there that you can apply for as a vendor, because there's lots of things that might be good for you guys. So we want you to be able to know that. You can search what's available. Everybody is supposed to post what they do on here. Every state-making grant agency that uses SFS is supposed to post their announcement so that people will see what it is. And this is publicly available. You do not have to be logged in or have a password or login or name or any of that. It's just a public link, which is right here. And you can search for bid events. You can sign up to get notifications. And then if you need to, you can modify that information. Searching. basic searching, right? You can search by the name of the opportunity if you happen to know it. You can search by if something is available or maybe it's anticipated to be coming out. You can search by eligibility, which is whichever type of entity you are. You can search by a funding agency. Maybe you're only interested here. Maybe you're interested in DEC, right? So Department of Environmental Conservation. You can look for that. You can search by a service area. Service areas are very large, overarching classifications of the grant, basically. So, and again, overarching, they are not very granular. Government supports, environmental supports, educational supports, transportation supports, like, big. But each of our organizations that give out grants will classify their grant with one or more of those service areas. When you come along and decide, hey, I'm really interested in this stuff, I want to get notified when grants are available, you can use the link to sign up for notifications. And again, no login, just put in your name, your org, your email. And then down here, you're going to choose, what do you care about? What do you want to be notified about when a state agency publishes a grant that is about one of these topics? Now, I'm going to tell you to select them all. I know you're going to say, no, Kristen, I don't do anything with transportation. And you might not. Sometimes these things come out and they are weird. Like I look at it and I'm like, that doesn't make sense that it's with that agency, but you never know. So it's not going to hurt to sign up. All it is an email. It's going to tell you, hey, this is available. Go look at it if you want. And you click on it. There's not that many posted. 5, 10 a month at the most. So it's not like you're going to be inundated with emails, but that's my suggestion, or just pick whatever you're interested in. Here's our help desk, some information on that. You definitely want to give as much information when you contact our help desk as possible. I can't tell you how many questions we get that say, I need help with pre-qualification. And that's great, but we really need to know what you need help with, because if we know that when we go to contact you, we get these tickets, right? We can already look at it ahead of time. We can look at your pre-qualification and see maybe what the problem is. And then when we get on the phone with you or email you, we can tell you right away, instead of having to sort of go through what is the issue, and then we have to start researching it. It makes it much easier the most information you can give us. Okay. Questions. So I'm not sure how we're going to, I don't know if they're in the chat or if we want to have people open up for speaking. How are you doing? How have you been doing it?
For the most part, just bringing them up at the end. I do see that we have one question in the chat, so we'll start there. But if anyone has any questions that pop into their head or that they've been holding on to, please do raise your hand with the react button, and we'll call on you, and you can go and receive expertise from the lovely Kristen. So, Kristen, first up, John Helt is asking, is the nonprofit process the same for municipalities? Will Kristen be providing an overview for municipal entities, as there are many CACs listening in? I think this was around halfway through the presentation when you were talking about eligibility and logging into SFS.
Gotcha. Actually, government does not have to pre-qualify. Now, you would need to register, certainly, in order to be in the system, to get your payments, to have the access to apply for grants. That type of thing. But you do not need to be pre-qualified. The idea has always been that the government organizations are pretty regulated in a lot of ways, and we understand that, and so it's always been a nonprofit requirement, not anybody else.
As a follow-up question, as someone who helps write grants for various entities, it always comes up that sometimes some folks forget to register, or they don't have all their numbers and paperwork away and all squared away, so it's not a quick process. Can you give folks an idea of how long sometimes the turnaround time can be for registering, or say you need to request maybe it's not your SAM number anymore, but the unique entity number, I think, can you give folks an idea for that just so that they can have it in their mind for planning purposes?
Sure. If all goes well, in terms of like when you give us your forms and everything, your registration, I'll talk about registration first. For registration, as long as we get everything we need at the outset, and if you follow the instructions on the website, we will get everything we need. And it's correct. Now, by correct, your tax ID number that's on there, your FEIN, your EIN, it needs to match your what's registered to your name with the feds. A lot of times what'll happen is people will give me sort of a colloquial name, right? When they send it to me, they'll say like, oh, we're the AR or AS, I'm just making up letters, PCQR. That's not going to work. Like, we need to know what the exact name is, right down to ink with a period. We need to know how it looks on your certificate of incorporation, because that is what is tied to your tax ID number. So that's one of the snags that we get if the name's not right, because we will submit what you give us. We believe you if you tell us that that is your name. But once it goes to the check, so there's like a check with SFS that's going to make sure that that EIN is actually yours, because we don't want to set you up with something that doesn't belong to you. It's going to kick it back if it's not the exact name. So that sometimes can take time. I have to go back or my staff has to go back and say, hey, is this really your name? Like, can you send us your certificate so we can look at it? And then we have to redo it. Now that process of us submitting it to SFS, getting the number back or the kickback back saying it's wrong, that takes 2 to 3 business days, because there's some communication that has to go on behind the scenes. In order, if all else is good, when the paperwork comes in and there's not a huge line, we can process a form in a day or two, get everything in, get it over to SFS. So it could be done in 5 days. It could be done in 3 days if everything goes quickly. But we say, give us 5 to 10, because you never know. And then if things get crazy and we don't know your name, I've got one that's been going on for like 6 months. We can't figure out what her name is. It just won't match anything. That's going to take time. So there are issues like that, but generally we can get it done. And if we were really getting it together and everything was perfect, 5 days. But again, when things are due, things are happening, you got a grant coming up, you got a lot of people in the same situation. So my staff doesn't increase when this happens. Like, we have the same amount of people. So we'll get, 100 in a day, and that's going to be, we're going to need to take a little time to get through that, which is why we give ourselves the 5 to 10 days. Early as possible. Pre-qual, that depends on what you've got and how organized you are. I've seen people get pre-qualified in a day. Doesn't happen frequently, but we've gotten it down to a science where if somebody says to me, oh my gosh, I've got a problem, and we can get you in. You've got your SFS ID, you've got, everything you need. If I can get you in, I will. We'll do everything we can, but you then have to fill everything out. And I can not tell you how many people cannot find any of those documents that we're talking about. Again, you've got people, a lot of turnover, right? Not-for-profits over the years. It might be hard to locate some of that. You might need to get copies. You might need to call people and find out where they are, things like that. So that can take time. But if you are all set, the answers, and all of the information's on my website. So you can get that before you're even in SFS. You could go right now and go just try and make sure I've got that, and you'll be good. If you've got all that and you can get it in fast, and say you're applying for something, I might be able to find a pre-qual specialist to review it quickly. But that's not a promise. We say 5 to 10 days, and we really need you to submit it early, because I can't tell you, there's a lot of times things go back and forth with pre-qual. People might, have an answer that's questionable, that we need to review or we need to discuss. And that happens, and then that adds days. So, all else perfect, it could take a couple of days, but that's not often. I hope that helps. Any
Absolutely.
other questions?
I don't see any more questions in the chat. Anybody, we've got a few minutes left. If you have a question, probably just unmute yourself at this point. That would be great. Um, we have Kristen's time, so let's make the most of it.
The other thing I'll say is, if you contact our help desk and you know that there's something, very specific that maybe I could help with based on something I said today, you can put in, can I talk to Kristen Hamilton? And they will make sure I get it. So you can do that as well if you need to reach me afterwards. You can just put in the help desk ticket and say for Kristen Hamilton, and somebody will get it to me. But that's if there's something very specific you need from me, I can do it.
Yeah, and all of today's sessions are being recorded, so they should be able to be viewed at a later date also. So hopefully if people need to reference something quickly, they'll be able to look back at that. But absolutely, thank you for offering yourself as a resource. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I suppose it's okay for us to wrap up early. Kristen, thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. It's much appreciated. And hopefully it'll be happy grant season soon. So
Absolutely. Thank you all. I was really happy to be able to speak with everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your conference.
thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.